So imagine you make a mistake, right? And it's so public and just so deeply frowned upon by the people around you that your community literally describes you as being, quote, doomed to darkness.
Right, which is just incredibly heavy.
It really is. You are entirely written off. I mean, your future is just erased from the collective imagination of your hometown. Now, imagine driving back into that exact same town 10 years later.
And not just sneaking in through the back roads either.
Exactly. You weren't sneaking in. You were driving a dark blue Mercedes.
Yeah.
You're the guest of honor at this massive community event. And, the parents who once shared in your disgrace are looking at you with just overwhelming pride.
It's quite the image.
Right. So today we are taking a deep dive into a narrative that explains exactly how a person survives that decade-long gap. Welcome to the deep dive, by the way.
Glad to be here. It's a staggering premise, honestly, because it forces us to look at the actual mechanics of redemption.
Yeah, the mechanics of it.
Exactly. We are examining an excerpt from chapter 11 of a text called Robbers of Life. And what makes this particular chapter so compelling is that it operates on two distinct tracks.
Tracks, right. Yeah.
On one track, we have a town undergoing this massive, almost frantic modernization. And then on the other, we have this deeply intimate portrait of a young woman named Stella, who is just fighting her way back from total social exile.
And the mission for our deep dive today is to really map those two tracks out. We're going to chronologically trace this community's intense economic struggle and Stella's journey from public disgrace to just, triumphant success.
We really want to extract the underlying blueprint of resilience from this text.
We do. And if you are listening to this right now, especially if you are a teenager or young adult who feels like you have hit an absolute dead end, like you've made a mistake you can never come back from.
Yeah, that feeling of being totally stuck.
Right. If you feel that way, we are unpacking this specifically for you today. We want to look at the exact blueprint of a second chance.
But before we pull out that blueprint, we do need to establish some parameters for our analysis today.
Oh, definitely. The disclaimer.
Right, because the source material we're working with, it contains very definitive, socially charged viewpoints, particularly regarding abortion.
Yeah, it really does.
The text uses intense language and takes a very uncompromising philosophical stance on this subject, so we have to navigate that carefully.
Which means we need to set a really clear boundary right now. In this deep dive, we are functioning strictly as impartial reporters.
Exactly. We are not taking sides.
Nope. We are not endorsing the text-specific viewpoints either. Our role is just to analyze the contents, the narrative structure, and the characters' underlying motivations, exactly as they exist in these pages.
We want to impartially map the author's philosophical foundation.
Right, so you, the listener, can understand the core message of the story without us, putting a thumb on the scale.
I like to think of it as analyzing the architecture of the argument rather than telling you whether you should build your own house that way.
That's a great way to put it. And the architecture of this story actually begins with the physical landscape itself.
It does, because to understand Stella's return, we first have to understand the Corinda that she is returning to. The region has undergone a metamorphosis that completely mirrors her own.
Yeah, the author paints this transition so vividly. Like, 10 years ago, the environment was basically defined by decay.
Total disrepair.
Exactly. The roads were just these massive networks of potholes filled with stagnant rainwater.
Yeah.
But the present day Corinda, it is completely unrecognizable.
It really is.
We are talking about flawlessly tarmacked roads. The sprawling old coffee plantations have vanished, and they've been replaced by these highly organized, gated residential communities.
The text specifically points to the Tassia estate scheme as the prime example of this shift. And, this isn't just a cosmetic upgrade.
No, not at all.
When you pave over coffee plantations to build gated communities, you are looking at a fundamental shift in economic priorities. It marks a transition from an agrarian, export-heavy economy
to a rapidly emerging middle-class residential hub.
Exactly. The potholes filled with stagnant water, those represented a community that was physically and economically bogged down. Tarmac represents flow, connection, and speed.
Right. People aren't just working the land and exporting the yields anymore. They are settling on it with this expectation of modern security and comfort.
But they haven't entirely abandoned agriculture, have they?
No, they really haven't. It seems more like they just highly industrialized it.
Yeah, the text describes traffic jams caused by lorries transporting hay and pineapple residues from a beer brewing factory.
Oh, wow, yeah.
It is this highly optimized symbiotic supply chain now. and the dairy industry is just booming.
Right. People are hauling these huge aluminum buckets of milk to collection centers.
Right.
But it's not going to the state anymore, is it?
That is a critical detail right there. Historically, that milk went to the National Cooperative Creamery.
Right.
But the community established its own massive milk processing factory. They are now processing, packaging, and distributing their own milk nationwide.
That's huge.
It is. Corinda is producing the highest grade cows in the entire constituency now.
Which totally shifts the demographic of who is actually doing the farming, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you usually picture an aging population maintaining rural farms.
You do, yeah.
But the text explicitly notes that young people are flooding into this sector. They are making farming their primary livelihood, but they are treating it like a tech startup.
That's a perfect analogy.
They are enrolling in specialized veterinary and animal husbandry courses. They have opened hundreds of veterinary clinics and animal feed outlets. I mean, aspiring farmers from all over the country are migrating to Corinda.
Because Corinda has inadvertently become a laboratory for what sociologists call collective efficacy.
Collective efficacy. Okay, unpack that for us.
It's basically a gold rush, but built on dairy and specialized agriculture. And the wild part is, it stems directly from institutional failure.
Right, the water crisis.
Exactly. The text reveals that the region's official water supplier completely collapsed due to corruption. It led to highly irregular supply and eventual closure.
And usually when municipal water fails, a town just dries up and dies. People leave.
They do. The vacuum of state support usually crushes rural areas. But the people of Corinda mobilized in the exact opposite direction.
They really did. Almost every single home bored their own water wells.
Right. And they purchased and installed electric chaff cutters for their livestock to maximize efficiency.
It's incredible. And it wasn't just the water either.
No, when the official policing couldn't manage the rising local insecurity, the community didn't wait for state intervention.
Right. They implemented community policing, where young men and old men took night shifts together to patrol their villages.
So they essentially built a parallel privatized infrastructure out of sheer necessity.
Yeah. The water fails, they dig boreholes. The National Creamery is inefficient. They build their own factory. The police are understaffed. They form cross-generational night watches.
It sounds like this perfect, self-correcting utopian economy.
It does sound like that. But I find myself questioning the emotional reality of that.
What do you mean?
Well, does sudden material wealth and efficient infrastructure actually cure a social fracture? Because it sounds a bit like rural gentrification. Like you can pave the roads, but what is actually happening inside those new gated communities?
That's a really good point, and the author does not let the community off the hook in that regard.
Really?
Yeah. The economic x-ray looks perfect, but the social patient is still bleeding. The text reveals a severe, localized epidemic of broken homes.
Oh, wow.
There is a massive structural shift happening where divorced young women are abandoning the husband's homes, returning to their father's land, and using their inheritance to build houses as single mothers.
That is a massive tectonic shift for a traditionally agrarian community structure.
It is a profound destabilization, and honestly, it gets much darker.
How so?
Alongside the young people opening lucrative veterinary clinics, there is a large demographic of youth who have completely lost hope.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
They are wasting away in the town centers, consuming filthy, illegal alcohol at all hours. Furthermore, because Corinda is geographically close to the capital city, the town is seeing a rapid proliferation of drug dens.
So you have this jarring, almost whiplash-inducing juxtaposition here.
Extremely jarring.
On one corner, a young person is running a highly profitable, modernized animal feed outlet. On the opposite corner, another young person is losing their life to illegal alcohol in a drug den.
Exactly.
It just proves that a shiny exterior, whether it's a tarmacked road, a booming local economy, or, on a personal level, getting a prestigious job or buying a luxury car, it doesn't automatically heal internal trauma.
No, it absolutely doesn't.
You can have electric chaff cutters and national milk distribution and still have a generation of kids drinking themselves to oblivion because they lack a sense of purpose.
The town repaired its infrastructure, but the souls inhabiting that infrastructure are still fighting for survival.
Man, that is heavy.
It is. This is the intensely complicated, fractured environment hosting the day's main event. The community has gathered to launch a brand new youth program.
And this is where the guest of honor arrives. We are introduced to Stella.
Yes, Stella.
And a text characterizes her past bluntly. I mean, 10 years ago, she was facing absolute public disgrace. She was the girl, quote, doomed to darkness.
Right.
But her arrival today is nothing short of cinematic. She pulls up with this massive, radiant smile. She is driving a dark blue Mercedes.
What an entrance.
Right. And she is escorted by her 10-year-old son, who's described as incredibly handsome. Her mother immediately approaches and hugs her.
And her father?
Her father simply holds her hand tight, looking at her with this profound, quiet pride. The author notes that she is reaping the fruits of her disgrace.
The symbolism here requires some careful unpacking.
Let's do it.
Let's start with the dark blue Mercedes. In this narrative ecosystem, the car operates as a physical manifestation of her traded sorrow.
Okay.
10 years prior, she was the object of public scorn and shame. Today, she arrives in an undeniable, highly visible symbol of authority and success.
And the color choice matters too, right?
Absolutely. Dark blue is traditionally associated with stability, depth, and corporate seriousness. It contrasts sharply with something frivolous or flashy.
So she has arrived not just as a survivor, but as an established authority.
Exactly. And the presence of her son is equally loaded.
Yeah, the text goes out of its way to specify that the 10-year-old boy looks entirely like his mother and shares absolutely zero physical resemblance to his father.
That is perhaps the most crucial narrative detail in her introduction.
Really? Why is that?
Because it represents her complete ownership over her new life and her physical reality. The father, the man who was presumably part of the circumstances leading to her public disgrace, he is entirely erased from the physical monument of the child. The boy is presented as a product of her resilience alone. He even physically assists her, right? He removes a heavy carton from the back seat. He is an active, supportive participant in her triumphant return, not a lingering shadow of her trauma.
I want to pause here and just frame this for anyone listening who feels trapped by their own history.
Please do.
When you make a monumental mistake, especially when you're young, the societal pressure convinces you that your life is permanently defined by that one event. You assume the X-ray of your life will forever show this unfixable shatter.
Yeah, that it's just over.
But look at Stella's narrative arc. Her community actively doomed her to darkness. They wrote her off completely. Yet here she is, a decade later, quite literally in the driver's seat of the narrative.
Yeah.
Her family, who likely bore the brunt of that public shame alongside her, are now her proudest anchors. It's just incredible.
The contrast is inspiring, absolutely, but it naturally begs a mechanical question.
Right. Because magic is not a factor in this text.
Right. A person does not teleport from public disgrace to the driver's seat of a luxury vehicle through sheer willpower alone. There is always a mechanism for ascent.
You don't just close your eyes, wish really hard, and wake up a decade later as the guest of honor. So let's trace that timeline, because it is staggering.
It really is.
According to the text, Stella took her academic exams while heavily pregnant.
Just think about the pressure of that alone.
Right. And just 5 months after finishing those exams, she gave birth to her son. Despite the physical and social turmoil, she passed with good grades. She then enrolled in a university to study theology.
And the momentum only accelerates from there.
What happens next?
During her second year studying theology, she secured a scholarship to Britain.
Wow, Britain?
She relocated, studied there for 2 years until graduation, and then returned to her home country.
That's amazing.
Upon her return, she secured a position as a lecturer at the country's outstanding University of Theology.
A full-blown lecturer.
Yeah, and for the past 5 years, she has lived entirely independently, raising her son, who is described as defying all the odds.
I have to marvel at the sheer physics of that timeline. She took high-stakes exams while pregnant, gave birth, navigated university, and then secured an international scholarship to the UK.
It's almost unbelievable.
That kind of endurance is difficult to comprehend. It is like trying to run a marathon while carrying a backpack full of heavy stones.
That's exactly what it's like.
When your entire community expects you to vanish into obscurity, the stamina required to not only persist, but to excel academically on an international level is ferocious.
It really is.
It proves that life does not pause to let you catch your breath after a crisis. It demands a completely different gear.
It demands an immense internal fortitude, certainly. But the text provides a vital counter-narrative to a very toxic modern concept.
Which concept?
We often glorify the myth of the sole survivor, the idea that true resilience means pulling yourself up by your bootstraps completely alone.
Oh, right. The self-made myth.
Exactly, but the author explicitly rejects that here. The text notes that Stella's parents took on the responsibility of looking after her young boy so that she could actually pursue her education.
Wait, really? So she wasn't doing it all alone?
Not at all. They did their absolute best to see their daughter succeed.
That completely reframes her success for me. She didn't bootstrap this in a vacuum.
No, she didn't. Resilience within the framework of this story is not solitary confinement. True resilience requires the humility and vulnerability to accept help.
That is such a crucial point.
If her parents had succumbed to the community's judgment and abandoned her to her disgrace, which honestly is a tragic reality for many teenage mothers in strict traditional structures.
Right, they get kicked out.
Yeah. If they had done that, she likely never finishes her local university, let alone travels to Britain. Her parents provided the foundational grace that allowed her to conquer the academic world.
And it's fascinating to me that she chose to study theology, out of all things.
Why do you think that is?
Well, of all the disciplines, she chose the one most closely associated with moral frameworks and community judgment.
Oh, that's true.
She essentially mastered the very systems that likely condemned her in the first place.
That's a brilliant way to look at it.
And while Stella was in Britain mastering theology, the narrator of our story was carving out their own parallel path of redemption.
Right. Yes, the narrator reveals they became a high school teacher.
Which is a huge milestone in itself.
It is, a milestone they proudly combine with Stella's achievements. But more importantly, the narrator evolved into a guidance and counseling teacher at their school.
Also, they are directly working with the youth.
Exactly, utilizing their innate talent for writing to help teenagers navigate the brutal realities of everyday life.
It creates a really compelling narrative symmetry.
Oh, so?
You have two individuals who survived a deeply dark period in their community's history. Stella's trajectory goes outward. She leaves the continent to acquire high-level academic authority and returns as a university lecturer. And then the narrator's trajectory goes inward. They embed themselves deeply within the local public school system as a counselor.
Both have synthesized their past trauma into actionable wisdom, but they are applying it from completely different vantage points.
Yes, and this youth program launch we've been talking about, this event is the physical intersection of their combined efforts.
Which brings us to the actual project they are launching today, the Blessings and Hope Center.
The Blessings and Hope Center.
Yeah.
On paper, it is described as a recreation center for teenagers.
But it's so much more than that.
It really is. When you look at the mechanics of it, it is a highly specialized sanctuary. The text specifically frames it as a direct alternative to abortion.
Right.
And they aren't just offering advice or a place to play games,
Right.
They are providing heavy logistical support.
They are operationalizing empathy. That's the best way to describe it.
I love that phrase, operationalizing empathy. What does that actually look like on the ground?
Well, the text outlines that the center provides basic needs for pregnant mothers right up until the point of delivery. Okay.
But the most critical intervention they offer is baby care. If a teenage mother is still in school, the center provides childcare so she can physically return to her education.
I want to pull on that thread because that is a massive paradigm shift.
It really is.
It is the difference between a charity that offers kind words and an intervention that actually alters a life trajectory.
It is the difference between diagnosing a problem and actually treating it.
Yeah.
Stella and the narrator recognize that the primary barrier preventing a teenage mother from finishing her education is not a lack of ambition.
No, of course not.
It is the sheer logistical impossibility of sitting in a mathematics class while being responsible for an infant.
Exactly. You just can't do it.
By providing free childcare, the founders are essentially institutionalizing the exact same parental grace that Stella's parents provided for her.
They are scaling the safety net.
Precisely.
Mhm.
For young girls who do not have supportive parents at home, the center becomes the surrogate support system. Institutionalizing grace. I just keep coming back to that phrasing. It's funded through donors and the founder's own personal savings, built right there on a plot in the village town.
But there is a strategic decision the founders made that I find genuinely brilliant.
Oh, about the location.
Yes. Sure. Stella is a theology lecturer. The overarching theme of redemption here is deeply spiritual. It would seem like the most natural thing in the world to build this sanctuary within the local church infrastructure.
Right, it seems like a perfect fit.
But they deliberately refuse to do that.
Why?
The author details this decision meticulously. The founders evaluated the sociological landscape and concluded that building the center within the church would reduce it to an affiliate.
Ah, that's
They
it.
worried it would place an undue financial and administrative burden on the congregation. But more critically, they feared it would chain the program to the specific rules and biases of the church.
That makes total sense.
They insisted the center remain open to everyone, entirely regardless of their religion or personal beliefs.
It is like the difference between proprietary technology and open source software.
That's a great analogy.
If you build it inside the church, it becomes proprietary. To access the resources, a desperate teenager might feel they have to sign the user agreement of that specific religion, right?
Right.
Or pretend to be a perfect parishioner just to get a diaper or a babysitter.
Exactly.
By keeping the center secular and independent, making it open source, so to speak, they completely strip away the barrier of judgment.
It shifts the entire dynamic of seeking help.
It does.
When a teenager walks through those doors, they aren't met with moral condemnation. They are met with structural facilitation.
Right. They receive the physical tools required to rebuild their lives without having to navigate a maze of religious bureaucracy or community gossip.
And the community response just validates that strategy entirely.
Yeah, the scene the author constructs for this opening day. It feels more like a vibrant music festival than a solemn charity ribbon cutting.
It sounds incredibly joyful.
It really does. The air is filled with colored teenagers in bright uniforms, fashion jeans, cool tops. There is danceable music playing.
And who is actually attending this festival?
The attendees include current students and alumni from the Kandundu Day Mixed Secondary School.
And it is worth noting that the Kandundu school is experiencing its own structural renaissance, mirroring Stella and the town.
Oh, really? How so?
The author highlights that the school has expanded to 4 streams. It boasts a large new library, an upgraded laboratory, and a growing population of teachers and students.
That's fantastic.
It is described as moving from glory to glory, acting as an incubator for diverse talents and careers. The rising tide in Corinda is lifting the educational institutions as well.
So it's all connected.
Yes.
Now, amidst this massive, vibrating crowd of youth, the narrator experiences a series of reunions with key figures from the past.
And these aren't just casual catch-ups either.
No, these side characters represent the wildly different trajectories a person can take following a crisis. First, there's Sammy.
Sammy. He's the brother of a girl named Rachel, whom we will discuss shortly.
Right. The narrator hasn't seen Sammy since their school days because Sammy left the country to study abroad. Today, he is a senior doctor at the Corinda General Hospital.
Sammy operates as a symbol of academic and professional redemption. He pursued a path very similar to Stella's.
Right, getting out to get educated.
Exactly. He extracted himself from the immediate environment, acquired highly specialized elite skills, and then returned to inject those skills back into the community.
He literally returned to heal the town as a physician.
He did.
Then we meet Pastor Moriyama. The text refers to him as the man of truth.
He isn't a new addition, is he?
No, he was the steadfast mentor who fought in the trenches alongside Stella and the narrator during the darkest days 10 years ago.
Right.
He is present to offer a prayer and spiritual guidance, acting as a father figure and real-life counselor for the community.
He represents enduring moral support. When the rest of the community was dooming Stella to darkness, he did not abandon his post.
He serves as the bridge between the secular logistical operation of the new center and the deeply rooted spiritual needs of the community.
Exactly. But the most arresting reunion is with Mrs. Kiandandu.
Oh, wow. Yeah, this interaction is incredibly heavy.
It is.
She is described as a gracious mother and a crucial torchbearer for the community. But she is actively dying.
Yes.
Her health is deteriorating rapidly due to dual diagnoses of cancer and AIDS. She's experiencing profound physical pain, yet she absolutely refused to miss this ceremony.
She is there specifically to celebrate Stella's triumph and congratulate her on raising her son.
And the narrator drops this chilling contextual detail right here.
What is it?
This exact day marks the 7th anniversary of Mrs. Kiandandu's, quote, buried evil.
The inclusion of Mrs. Kiandandu introduces a necessary tragic realism to the narrative.
It really grounds the whole celebration.
It does. If Sammy represents total professional victory, Mrs. Kiandandu represents terminal consequences interwoven with enduring grace.
Wow. Enduring grace.
Yes. She is literally bearing the fatal physical ravages of her past cancer and AIDS. Furthermore, she carries the psychological weight of a dark secret, a buried evil that occurred 7 years prior.
Yeah, she's still there.
Exactly. Despite her terminal prognosis and her traumatic history, she actively chooses to participate in the future.
She chooses to celebrate the flourishing life in Stella's family, even as her own life is fading.
She is the physical proof that while the past leaves permanent, sometimes fatal scars, those scars do not disqualify a person from participating in communal hope.
Just picture that imagery. You have a woman dying of AIDS and cancer, standing amidst a crowd of teenagers in fashion jeans dancing to vibrant music.
It's a stark contrast.
It grounds the entire celebration. It communicates to the reader, we are celebrating this victory, but we have not forgotten the brutal cost of the journey.
Which perfectly sets the stage for the climax of the event.
Right. When the speeches begin and the community is forced to face what the text calls the robbers of life.
This is where we must lean on our impartiality disclaimer again, because the thematic and philosophical core of the text is laid entirely bare in these speeches. Stella takes the microphone and delivers an intensely emotional address. Her speech is a stark, uncompromising warning against abortion.
To summarize her arguments impartially, because this philosophy is the literal foundation of the sanctuary they just built, the text characterizes abortion in highly aggressive terms.
It does. It labels it a vice.
Right. It describes it as the habit of merciless quacks who are motivated purely by financial gain and harbor zero regard for the lives of the young women they treat.
Stella argues that the act violently rips away a person's conscience, leaving them feeling empty and dead inside.
The foundational argument here is that attempting to cover up a societal mistake with this procedure ultimately destroys the internal humanity of the person who undergoes it.
The rhetoric is intentionally abrasive.
Very much so.
It is designed to administer a shock to the community's system and confront what the author perceives as a quiet, deadly normalization of the practice.
But the true narrative power of her speech doesn't stem from the academic or moral arguments she makes.
No, it stems from her vulnerability.
Exactly. She does not lecture the crowd from the detached safety of her new status as a university lecturer. She steps back down into the mud.
She confesses.
Yes. In front of the entire town, in front of the high school students, the parents who judged her, the doctor, the pastor, she admits her own history.
It's a huge moment.
She tells the crowd that 10 years ago, desperate to hide her own vice and escape the crushing weight of public shame, she nearly aborted her son.
And she goes even further than that, right?
She does. She explicitly admits that she had planned to throw the infant into a latrine as a final, desperate attempt to camouflage her situation.
It is an utterly raw, horrifying admission of her darkest psychological moment.
It really is. By confessing that she was literally moments away from making the exact choice she is now aggressively campaigning against, she just completely annihilates any accusation of hypocrisy.
She actively bridges the vast chasm between the successful Mercedes-driving lecturer on the stage and the terrified, desperate teenagers standing in the crowd.
Exactly. Her confession essentially translates to, I know the terror you are feeling because I lived it.
I was so consumed by fear that I was willing to commit the unthinkable to protect my reputation.
She then explains the mechanics of her survival. She credits God, but she places immense emphasis on her friends and her parents.
The people who refused to give up on her.
Right. With their support, she says she aroused her dead conscience and fought back. And as she recounts this terrifying memory, she pauses. She is crying.
And she wipes her tears away with a white handkerchief.
Yes, that white handkerchief.
The narrator fixates on that white handkerchief because it functions as a critical symbol in the text.
What does it symbolize?
It triggers a memory of a specific Saturday afternoon from 10 years ago. While the text doesn't explicitly detail the minute-by-minute events of that specific Saturday, the handkerchief symbolizes the precise fulcrum of her life.
The turning point.
Exactly. It marks the exact moment her courage solidified. It represents the psychological transition from a panicked, cornered girl trying to hide her shame into the mature, responsible woman standing before them today.
And as she wipes away those tears, she introduces the living, breathing proof of that Saturday afternoon's courage.
She brings her 10-year-old son forward.
And the crowd finally learns his full name.
His name is Blessing Stella.
The naming convention is profoundly intentional here, isn't it?
Very intentional. In a culture where lineage and paternal naming hold massive social weight, she deliberately bypassed giving him his father's name.
Right, she gave him her own name.
She claimed him entirely. Naming him Blessing transforms him from a symbol of communal disgrace into the literal and figurative blessing of her life. He carries her identity forward, completely devoid of the trauma of his conception.
The crowd just immediately erupts.
I can imagine.
The choir of boys and girls from the Blessing School, which shares his namesake, by the way, linking the child in the institution forever, they begin to sing Happy Birthday.
Because this massive community festival isn't just the launch of a multi-million shilling youth center.
Nope. It is Blessing's 10th birthday.
The author meticulously layers these timelines here.
How so?
You have a 10-year-old boy celebrating his birthday, standing beside a mother celebrating a 10-year personal transformation, all in a town celebrating a decade of infrastructural rebirth.
It's all tied together perfectly.
But the author does not allow the reader to get lost in the pure joy of the moment.
No, they don't. The narrator suddenly experiences a heartbreaking realization amidst all the singing.
Yes, the narrator's mind jumps back to Rachel.
Sammy's sister.
Right. The narrator remembers that Rachel died exactly 10 years and 7 months ago.
Wow.
So right in the middle of this birthday song, the narrative forces us to juxtapose the tragic death of a pure Rachel with the vibrant 10-year-old life of blessing.
It forces the audience and the characters themselves to confront the razor-thin margins of these outcomes.
It really does. If Stella had succumbed to her panic 10 years ago, blessing would not exist.
And more ominously, the text implies that Stella might have shared Rachel's tragic fate, right?
Yes. Or suffered a spiritual death, becoming what the text describes as empty and animal-like. This juxtaposition crystallizes the philosophical core of the author's argument.
The text posits this universal rule. Every good act or bad leads us to a next level in life.
The underlying philosophy is that engaging in evil inherently makes us more prone to further evil.
Right. When we make a mistake, our instinct is to hide it. And to hide it, we often attempt to cover up that initial evil with a secondary, more destructive evil.
That recursive loop of deception and shame is what ultimately rots a person from the inside out.
And the Blessings and Hope Center is not just a building. It is designed to be a circuit breaker for that exact loop.
Exactly. It exists to provide a space where a teenager can break the cycle of covering up by facing reality with logistical support, rather than burying it in panic.
The architectural philosophy of the center is essentially a message to the youth. Do not hide. Step into the light. The light is harsh and terrifying, but we will provide the tools, the childcare, the food, the emotional counseling to ensure you survive the exposure.
And this entire philosophy is ultimately validated by Blessing himself.
Yes, the 10-year-old boy actually steps up to the microphone and delivers his own address.
He speaks directly to the crowd.
I have a direct quote from the text right here. He says, "If my mother aborted me, would she be celebrating today? I stand today pleading to all who are in this mess. Give that thing life, let it live, let it see the world. Who are you to rob a life? Stop it today."
It is the ultimate narrative vindication of Stella's terrifying choice a decade prior.
It really is. The infant who was moments away from being thrown into a latrine to preserve a reputation has grown into the most articulate, powerful advocate for the sanctuary's mission.
He is the living, speaking embodiment of the institutionalized second chance.
Now, whether you personally agree with the text's specific social and political stances regarding abortion or not, I want to abstract the underlying human truth of this narrative because it is profoundly relevant to anyone listening right now.
Oh, absolutely.
When you feel cornered by your own actions, whether you are a teenager facing an unplanned pregnancy, an adult staring down massive financial ruin, or a professional dealing with a catastrophic public failure, the loudest, most primal instinct in your brain is to hide.
Your biology just screams at you to cover your mistakes at any cost.
Right, to preserve your image, to make the problem disappear into the shadows so the community doesn't judge you.
But what Stella's trajectory argues, what this entire 10-year saga is screaming at us, is that the braver and ultimately only sustainable path is to step out of the shadows.
It is to step into the blinding, uncomfortable light, admit that you are terrified, ask for help from your support systems, and begin the grueling, unglamorous work of rebuilding.
And it serves as a crucial reminder of the timeline of true rebuilding.
10 years.
Exactly. It took the community of Corinda 10 grueling years to replace their potholes with tarmac and build their dairy factories.
And it took Stella 10 years of relentless academic and personal struggle to transform from a disgraced teenager into a university lecturer holding the keys to a dark blue Mercedes.
Deep healing is never an overnight process.
No, it's not. It requires immense stamina, the humility to accept support, and a definitive refusal to surrender to the robbers of life, whatever specific form those robbers take in your own personal narrative.
Which brings us to the close of our deep dive today.
We really have traversed an incredible decade. We watched a rural town paralyze itself with corruption, only to circumvent the state and build a thriving, privatized agricultural powerhouse.
We watched a young woman entirely discarded by her community leverage the unwavering grace of her parents to master theology abroad.
And returned to build a secular, barrier-free sanctuary for the next generation of girls facing her exact nightmare.
We observed how characters like Dr. Sammy and the tragically, terminally ill Mrs. Kiandandu map the complex, varied outcomes of life's crises.
And we dissected the psychological argument that attempting to bury our mistakes only hollows out our humanity, whereas facing them with courage is the only mechanism that allows us to level up in life.
It is a massive amount of narrative and psychological architecture to process.
It is. But as we sign off, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over.
Let's hear it.
Think about the strategic brilliance of Stella and the narrator when they designed that youth center. They realized that providing a free babysitter and a judgment-free zone was infinitely more effective at changing a life than just handing out moral advice from a pulpit.
Very true.
So look at your own life. Look at your workplace, your family dynamic, your friend group, when the people around you make monumental, seemingly unforgivable mistakes. Do the systems and attitudes you have in place only offer them a dark corner to hide their shame?
Or do you offer them a practical, judgment-free infrastructure for a second chance?
And more importantly, if someone you loved failed today, which one would you offer them?
Because if this text teaches us anything, it is that human lives are not simple equations. They are incredibly complex.